The night in Accra was heavy with silence, the kind that pressed on the skin and made the ticking of the clock sound louder than usual. In the Williams' living room, the wooden cabinet stood quietly in the corner, its drawer locked with a small brass key. No one touched it, no one dared. But many years later, when the police came to that same living room, their first move was to pull out the drawer and slam the contents on the table. Neighbors whispered that the family had been cursed, that one hidden truth had destroyed them all. If only the Williams children had listened that first night when their mother warned them. If only they had left the drawer alone. Mrs. Sarah Williams had built her life carefully, like a pot balanced on a narrow shelf. Every evening, after supper, she would check the drawer, slip the key into the lock, and turn it with slow precision before sliding it deep into her purse. Her husband David pretended not to notice, but he always saw her fingers trembling. Michael, Anna, and John noticed too. Children notice everything. They whispered about it at night, curious why their mother guarded that piece of furniture as though it held her heart. But what was inside was not only Sarah's past, it was their future. Anna, the most stubborn of the three, felt it strongest. She often sat staring at the cabinet, her mind burning with questions. Why did her mother cry some nights when everyone else slept? Why did her father never ask? It was not until one careless evening, when Sarah forgot her key on the dining table, that the story of their family truly began. That night would crack open the walls of their home, and none of them would ever live the same way again. The day Sarah forgot her keys, Accra was restless with the sound of distant traffic and the cries of hawkers along the street. Inside the Williams home, the air was tense, though no one could explain why. The family had finished supper and Sarah rushed to her bedroom, leaving her handbag on the dining table. She had no idea that the tiny brass key she guarded so carefully had slipped out and rested there shining faintly under the dim light. Anna was the first to notice. Her heart thumped wildly, and for a moment she froze, staring at the key as though it were alive. She whispered to Michael and John, who leaned closer, their faces lit with curiosity. Michael shook his head, muttering that they should leave it alone, but Anna's eyes were already burning with determination. She whispered that secrets only grew bigger if you ignored them. John, the youngest, bit his lip nervously, yet even he couldn't resist the pull of the unknown. They tiptoed to the cabinet, every creak of the wooden floor making their hearts leap. Anna slipped the key into the drawer's lock, her hands trembling as she turned it. The sound of the lock clicking open echoed in their ears louder than thunder. When the drawer slid out, their breath caught. Inside were neat stacks of money, enough to make their father's salary look like nothing. Tucked beside it were old photographs of a man none of them had ever seen, and letters written in their mother's handwriting, but signed with a different name. Anna's hand shook as she picked up one letter. The words made no sense to her, but the tone was heavy, desperate, filled with fear. It was at that moment Sarah's footsteps sounded in the hallway. The children scrambled, but it was too late. Their mother's shadow fell across them, and when she saw the open drawer, her cry tore through the house like a wound opening wide. Sarah's cry was not the ordinary cry of a mother scolding her children. It was raw, heavy, and filled with a pain that none of them had ever heard before. The sound froze them where they stood. Anna clutching the letter, Michael staring at the piles of money, and John holding a photograph of the stranger. Sarah rushed forward, snatched the letter from Anna's hands, and slammed the drawer shut with trembling force. Her whole body shook as she pressed her back against the cabinet, as though protecting it from her own children. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice breaking. Her eyes filled with tears that
peeled before she could wipe them away. The children were terrified, not of punishment, but of the sudden realization that their mother was not who they thought she was. David, who had been in the bedroom, stormed into the living room after hearing the commotion. He stopped at the door, staring at the scene, his wife in tears, the drawer half open, and his children standing guilty and wide-eyed. David demanded an explanation, his voice firm but uneasy. Sarah shook her head again and again, refusing to speak. Instead, she clutched the letter to her chest and muttered, "You should never have seen this. If the truth comes out, it will destroy us all." The words sent a cold shiver through the house. Michael, who had always admired his mother's strength, suddenly saw a woman breaking before his eyes. Anna's boldness shrank, but her curiosity burned even stronger. And John, too young to understand fully, felt the fear settle deep in his chest. David took a step closer, his eyes narrowing on the money and photographs that had slipped onto the floor. He bent, picked one up and stared at the face of the stranger. "Who is this man, Sarah?" he asked, in a voice that was low but sharp. Sarah's lips trembled, but she could not answer. Her silence spoke louder than any confession. And at that moment, the Williams family crossed into a shadow they could never escape. The night dragged on with no sleep in the Williams house. The children had been sent to their rooms, but none of them could close their eyes. They whispered through the walls, their voices shaking with fear and curiosity. Anna insisted their mother was hiding something too big to ignore, while Michael argued that it was dangerous to keep digging. John said nothing, clutching his blanket, replaying his mother's broken cry. In the living room, Sarah sat on the couch with her head buried in her hands. The letter she had snatched from Anna lay crumpled beside her. David paced back and forth, his anger simmering like water about to boil. "You owe me the truth, Sarah," he said firmly, his voice echoing in the quiet house. "Who is that man in the photographs? Why do you have this money hidden away?" Sarah lifted her face, her eyes swollen with tears. "David, please," she whispered. "If I tell you everything, you may never look at me the same again." Her words trembled in the air, but David's jaw tightened. "Then let me decide," he shot back. "I can't protect this family if I don't know who I married." For a long moment, Sarah said nothing. Then, with a voice heavy with resignation, she confessed the first piece of her hidden life. "The man in the photographs," she said slowly, "was once my husband." David froze, his breath catching. The room felt colder. "But Sarah," he said in disbelief, "you told me you were never married before." Her silence confirmed the lie. The children, listening quietly at the top of the staircase, felt their hearts pound faster. This was only the beginning, and they all knew it. If her mother had lied about her husband, what else had she hidden? And why did she say the truth could destroy them? The house felt like it was holding its breath. David's face tightened as he tried to process Sarah's words. His wife, the woman he had trusted for more than a decade, was confessing that she had lived another life, one he knew nothing about. His voice trembled with anger and disbelief. "You lied to me, Sarah. You stood before me in church, in front of God, and told me you had never been married before. How could you?" Sarah's tears spilled freely now, her voice breaking as she spoke. "I did it to protect us, David. You don't understand. That man, he wasn't just my husband. He was dangerous,
Everything about him was dangerous. If anyone finds out he was once part of my life, it won't just be my shame, it will destroy all of us. She pressed her hands together as if begging for forgiveness, her body trembling under the weight of memories she had locked away for years. David's fists clenched as he paced the room. So the money, the letters, the photographs, were those his too? Sarah shook her head. Some of the money was mine. I kept it hidden in case my past found me again. The letters, she paused, swallowing hard. They were from him. He wrote to me even after I left, even after I changed my name. I never replied, but I couldn't throw them away. It was my mistake, and now the children know.
Upstairs, the three children leaned closer on the staircase, their young faces pale with shock. Anna whispered, "Changed her name? What does that mean?" Michael shushed her, but his mind was spinning too. Their mother wasn't Sarah Williams, at least not always. And somewhere out there was a man who had once owned her heart, a man whose shadow still stretched into their home. The next morning, the Williams family ate breakfast in silence. The clatter of spoons against plates was the only sound in the room. Sarah's eyes were swollen from crying. David's jaw remained tight with anger, and the children stole glances at each other, each one too afraid to speak. The drawer was locked again, but its secrets hung heavy in the air. When David finally broke the silence, his words were sharp. "We can't live in this house with half-truths. Sarah, either you tell us everything, or I will find out myself." His tone made the children flinch, but Sarah only lowered her head, her hands trembling as she held her teacup. "You don't know what you are asking, David," she whispered. "The man from those photographs, he is not someone you want to go looking for." Michael, bold despite his father's dare, asked the question that had been burning in all their minds. "Mom, is he still alive?" Sarah froze, her silence louder than any answer. Anna leaned forward, her voice shaking. "And if he is, does he know where we are? Does he know us?" At that, Sarah's hand slipped and the teacup shattered on the floor. David stood up, his chair scraping harshly against the tiles. "Enough hiding, Sarah. We are your family. If your past can hurt us, then we deserve to know what we're facing." His voice was heavy with both fury and fear. Sarah finally lifted her gaze, her lips quivering. "He was not only my husband," she said slowly. "He was a criminal, a man who made enemies everywhere he went. If he is still alive, then one day he will come looking for me." The children gasped softly. John clutched Anna's hand, his little fingers cold. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper, almost as if the walls themselves might betray her. "And when he comes, he will not only take me, he will take everything." That night, the house was restless. Michael could not sleep. He stared at the ceiling, hearing his mother's words repeat in his head. He would take everything. His chest tightened as he imagined a stranger walking through their door, tearing apart the family he had always believed was safe. Down the hall, Anna lay awake too, her mind turning with questions. If their mother had changed her name, then who was she before Sarah Williams? And why had she never told them? Unable to keep her thoughts to herself, Anna crept into Michael's room. John followed shortly after, rubbing his sleepy eyes, unwilling to be left alone. They sat together on the edge of the bed, their whispers low but urgent. "We have to know more," Anna said firmly. Mom won't tell us the full story, but there might be something else in that drawer, something she didn't show us. Michael frowned. Anna, you saw how she cried. Maybe we should leave it alone. But even as he said it, part of him wanted the truth too. The children tiptoed down the hall, their hearts pounding with every step. The cabinet loomed in the living room, the brass key nowhere in sight. Anna crouched by the drawer and tugged, but it was locked tight. Her eyes searched the room until she spotted their mother's handbag resting on the chair. Carefully, she reached inside. After a few seconds of fumbling, her fingers brushed the cold shape of the key. The lock clicked open, and they pulled out the drawer once more. Beneath the stacks of money and photographs was a small folded document, yellowed with age. Michael unfolded it slowly, his eyes scanning the words before widening in shock. It was a marriage certificate, but the bride's name wasn't Sarah Williams. It was Rebecca Mensah. The children froze. Their mother wasn't Sarah after all. She was someone else entirely. The children stared at the paper, their hands trembling as though it carried fire. Rebecca Mensah. The name felt strange on their tongues, heavy with betrayal. Anna whispered it over and over again, her curiosity now burning like a fever. Michael wanted to fold the document back and hide it, but it was too late. The truth had already begun to seep into them, and they couldn't turn away. John clung to Anna's arm, his young voice shaking. If Mom is Rebecca, then who is Sarah?
Before they could speak further, a sudden voice made them all freeze. "What are you doing?" Sarah's figure filled the doorway, her shadow stretching across the living room. Her voice was calm, but sharp enough to cut through their guilt. The children spun around, their faces pale. The certificate slipped from Michael's hand and fluttered to the floor. Sarah walked forward slowly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She bent, picked up the paper, and held it against her chest. For a moment, she said nothing, only staring at her children with a look that was both sorrowful and fearful. Finally, she spoke in a voice that shook with weariness. "Rebecca Mensah is who I used to be. That life, that name, I buried it years ago. I thought it would never follow me here." The children looked at her, waiting, but she turned her face away. David appeared behind her, his expression unreadable. "So it's true. Even your name is a lie." His words cut deep, and Sarah flinched as though struck. She tried to explain, but her voice broke. "I wanted to give you all a chance at peace. I never meant to deceive you. But if I had told you the truth, you would have lived in fear every single day." Anna's voice rose, angry and trembling. "But we are living in fear now, Mom, because of what you are hiding." The words hung heavy in the air, and for the first time, Sarah had no answer. The house grew colder after Anna's words, as if the walls themselves were listening. Sarah sank into a chair, her shoulders slumped, holding the old certificate like a wound she couldn't heal. David stood near the doorway, staring at her with a mix of anger and disbelief. The children hovered in silence, too afraid to leave, but too restless to stay still. Finally, David spoke. "Sarah, or Rebecca, whoever you are, you owe us the whole truth. No more half stories, no more tears. Tell us who this man was and why you are so afraid of him." His tone was firm, but beneath it was desperation he couldn't hide. He needed answers, not only for himself, but for the safety of his family. Sarah's lips trembled as she began. "His name was Daniel Mensah. He was my first husband. I married him when I was very young, too young to know the danger I was walking into. At first, he was kind, charming, everything a girl could dream of.
But that face was only a mask. Behind it, he was part of a world filled with crime, violence, and greed. I thought I could save him. I thought love could change him. She shook her head, tears sliding down her cheeks. But love was not enough.
The children leaned closer, their fear mixing with curiosity. Sarah continued, her voice low but steady. Daniel controlled everything. Where I went, what I did, even the money I earned. And when I tried to leave, he made me pay for it with bruises and scars I never showed anyone. The money in that drawer, some of it was his. I kept it when I escaped because I knew one day I might have to run again. David's face hardened. So you ran, changed your name, and built a new life with me. And all this time you prayed the past wouldn't catch up? Sarah nodded weakly. Yes. But if Daniel is alive, he will come for me. He will come for us. The children shivered at her words. For the first time, they realized their family wasn't just broken by secrets. It was being haunted by them. The days that followed felt heavy, as though a storm hovered just above the Williams house. Sarah moved about the home quietly, speaking little. Her eyes often drifted to the cabinet as if expecting it to burst open on its own. David, once gentle and calm, grew sharper, his patience thinning under the weight of betrayal. The children tiptoed around their parents, whispering only when they were sure no one could hear. One evening, Michael returned from school to find David sitting in the living room with the photographs spread across the table. His father's eyes were fixed on the face of the stranger, Daniel Mensah. Michael, he said suddenly, startling him, look at this man. If you ever see him, you must tell me immediately. Do you understand? Michael nodded quickly, though fear made his stomach twist. It was the first time he realized his father was preparing for a battle he did not yet understand. That night, Sarah gathered the children in their bedroom. Her voice was low, trembling with both guilt and love. She said, I never wanted you to know this side of me, but I need you to promise me something. If anything ever happens to me, you must stay together. Don't let the past I ran from tear you apart. Her words frightened John, who clung to her arm, begging her not to leave them. But Anna could not stay silent. Mom, she whispered, what if he's already looking for you? What if he finds us here? Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line. She pulled Anna close and kissed her forehead. She said, then we must pray he never does. But in her heart, she knew prayers alone might not be enough. Far away in the city, a man unfolded an old photograph and stared at it for a long time. His lips curved into a cold smile. After years of silence, he had finally found a lead. Rebecca had hidden well, but not well enough. The following week was uneasy. Every knock at the gate sent shivers through the Williams family. Sarah avoided going out alone, and David began coming home earlier than usual, as though he sensed danger closing in. The children tried to act normal at school, but even their teachers noticed how distracted they had become. The weight of their mother's past clung to them like a shadow. One evening, just as the sun was dipping behind the roofs of Accra, a letter arrived. It was slipped under the front door without a sound. Michael discovered it first and called their parents. David picked it up, turning it over in his hands. There was no stamp, no address, only a single name written in bold letters, Rebecca. His stomach tightened as he unfolded the paper. The handwriting was sharp, deliberate. You thought you could bury me. You thought you could change your name and start again.
But I always find what belongs to me. I will come soon. David's hands shook as he read it aloud. Sarah sank onto the nearest chair, her face pale, her breath shallow. The children crowded around, their fears spilling over. "He knows where we live," Anna whispered, her voice breaking. John began to cry, clutching Sarah's arm. David clenched the letter in his fist, his anger boiling over. "Enough," he said firmly. "I will not let this man walk into my home and tear my family apart. If he comes, he will face me." But Sarah shook her head desperately. "You don't understand, David. Daniel is not like other men. He doesn't fight fear. He destroys." Her words sent a chill through everyone in the room. That night, no one slept. The letter sat on the table like a curse, reminding them that danger was no longer a story from Sarah's past. It was now standing at their doorstep. The final night came with heavy rain, pounding against the roof and windows as if the heavens themselves were warning the Williams family. The house was dark, the power flickering in and out. Sarah sat with her children close, whispering prayers under her breath, while David kept pacing near the window, his jaw set like stone. The letter lay torn on the table, but its threats still echoed in every corner of the house. A sudden knock on the gate broke the silence. It was slow, deliberate, and powerful. The children gasped, clinging tighter to their mother. David motioned for them to stay back as he stepped toward the door, his heart pounding. Sarah's voice rose in panic. "Don't open it, David. Please don't open it." But David's pride and anger pushed him forward. He could not let fear control him anymore. When the door swung open, a tall, broad-shouldered man stood in the rain. His face was older than the photographs, but his eyes were sharp, cold, and unmistakable. Daniel Mensah. He smiled, showing no warmth, only victory. "Rebecca," he said softly, his voice carried through the storm. "Did you really think you could hide from me forever?" Sarah fell to her knees, clutching the children. David stepped forward, his fists tight. "You will not touch my family," he declared. Daniel's smile widened. "Your family? She was mine before she was ever yours." His gaze drifted past David to the trembling children, and Sarah screamed. In that moment, Anna did something no one expected. She grabbed the old marriage certificate from the drawer and held it high. "You don't own her anymore," she shouted through her tears. Her voice shook the room, but it carried the strength of defiance. For the first time, Daniel's smile faltered. He looked at the paper, then at the children standing beside their mother. Something in their courage unsettled him. Without another word, he stepped back into the ring, his eyes cold. "This isn't over," he warned. Then he disappeared into the night. The Williams family held each other tightly, their tears mixing with relief and fear. The storm outside raged on, but inside they understood one thing. The truth had nearly destroyed them, but hiding it would have been far worse. From that night on, they no longer lived in shadows. They were no longer only Sarah's family, they were Rebecca's too. And together, they would face whatever came next.